Okay, Grüezi miteinander again. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, thank you, Talia. So I thought we could just start the session with just a few minutes of meditation, just mindfulness of the breath meditation. I know you normally start off with half an hour, but yeah, not so much time in our sessions, so we'll just do a few minutes to settle the mind. So please get into a comfortable meditation posture. And if you're sitting on a chair, then come off from the back of the chair. So you're, not leaning back on the chair, but supporting your weight by your own efforts. If you're sitting on a cushion, that's also good. Most important thing is just to maintain a good posture, so not slouching over. So try to be straight as you can. And then we'll just start with a few minutes of mindfulness of the breath meditation. But as we do that, first, as we get into our posture, just bring your awareness to your body and the whole realm of physical sensations in the body. And then first we try to relax any tension that we might be holding. So in particular, you can start from the head and go all the way down to the toes and just do a quick body scan, trying to identify any areas or pockets of tension. And if you recognize some tension there, just try to release it. So especially around the facial muscles, just really try to soften and not clench any of the muscles there. And then going all the way down at your own pace, all the way to your tippy toes. And then we can continue with just first taking 3 deeper breaths than normal. So here, very slow, deliberate breaths. So as you breathe in, really feel the abdomen expanding, also the diaphragm, feel the lungs expanding and filling up with air. And then release very naturally. And again, feeling the air come out. Again, take a very deep breath, very intentional. Gradually filling up the lungs entirely. And then release again. Last time, just a deep breath. And then release again. And so now we'll settle more into a natural breathing pattern. So here, just very effortless breathing. Try not to exert any kind of control or influence on it, but just let the breath itself. And here, maintain your awareness on the physical sensations in your body as you breathe in and out. So it can be the rising and falling of the abdomen, it can be the chest expanding and contracting, it can be the area in the nostrils and upper lip area. So wherever the breath appears most prevalent, most vividly, just maintain your awareness on that place. Then if other appearances occur to the mind, be they external, like different sounds, or internal, like different thoughts, then don't follow after them, don't chase after them, don't engage with them. Just let them pass away of their own accord. Okay, so as you're gently coming out of the meditation, we can also set our motivation. So please think that the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings, and in order that I may be able to liberate all the sentient beings from the oceans of samsaric suffering and lead them to the state of complete enlightenment, I myself must first achieve the state of enlightenment, and therefore I learn about the various practices, the various methods that lead to the attainment of enlightenment, and therefore I'm going to engage in listening to this lecture here this evening. All right. Oh yes, I wanted to just preface by saying, you know, es tut mir leid, aber ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch. Therefore, I'm going to be giving this lecture in English, and therefore I understand, I appreciate that some of you, English isn't your first language. And so if there's something you don't understand, then you can, raise your hand or somehow signal, and I'm very happy to, repeat or explain a word that you might not know. Okay? So don't be shy. Okay? All right. So let's see. As mentioned, yeah, there's good news and bad news, right? So as she mentioned, I went through the rest of the lectures by Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, and yes, she is going through the that picture of the wheel of life, but she actually leaves a lot of time for a question and answer at the end. So she goes through the 6 realms of existence, which is in one of the middle circles, but the actual 12 links of dependent origination, which all of you are so excited about, which is the outmost ring on that circle, she actually doesn't get to. So that's the bad news. But as Talia mentioned, I will go through the 12 links, lest the Luxem Center be accused of false advertising. So we will cover that material. But yeah, I'll be doing it. So you don't get the benefit of hearing Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo's explanation on it. So sorry, you're stuck with me instead. But what she ends up doing, actually, through going through the 6 realms of existence, actually, it's a quite nice teaching on the very first sort of topic that is in the Lam Rim, which many of you will know, the stages of the path to enlightenment. So those of you discovering Buddhism will know that. Then the other of you who were on my intro to Buddhism course in Tushita, you'll also know about Lam Rim. And if you don't know about Lam Rim, well, you will very soon. So just to review for many of you, Lam is path and Rim is stages. So the Lam Rim is a genre of teachings that came out. So first you have the Buddha, who taught in the sutras. The various sutras were basically records of the Buddha's conversations that he had with various people after he was enlightened, and they would ask him various questions. And then you had various commentaries that were written first by other Indian masters, and then as Buddhism spread to different geographical regions, then instrumental in that was one Indian master, Atisha Dipamkara, who from India to Tibet, and he traveled in what is it, the 10th century, I believe, 10th or 11th century, and Buddhism actually spread to Tibet twice. There was the earlier transmission that was, I think, in the 8th century, give or take 100 years. I'm not a historian, I'm a philosopher. And then after the first spread of Buddhism to Tibet, it actually went into decline, and then various wrong views developed. And so they invited Atisha to come and sort of clear up some of the misconceptions that had arisen. And so he wrote, in response to the questions that were coming up, he wrote this text called The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, or Tenzin Namjong, okay? And in that, he sort of arranged all of the various teachings of the Buddha that were found in the sutras. He arranged it in the sort of path, an order of our practice, okay? Because one sort of practical difficulty that even us today, if we just looked at the sutras, you know, there's 108 volumes of sutras. And a question would then come, well, if we then try to make sense of the sutras in terms of our practice, where do we begin? What do we actually do? So this genre started by Atisha, then categorizes and arranges the various teachings of Buddha into the order of practice. And so one way of then thinking about that order, I think I mentioned last week, but there's these three, they call it capable beings, or three sort of levels of practitioner, who have more expansive motivations with which they undertake their practice, okay? So this book, or actually there's three of them, the Lamrim Chenmo, or the Great Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, was written by the Tibetan master Lama Tsongkhapa. And in that, he says that actually the author of the text is actually Atisha, and he is just providing commentary on Atisha's work, the fundamental work that was written by Atisha. And then in that text, then there's these, you'll notice there's like the outlines of the text, right? Where it just describes, you know, in outline form, all the points that are covered. And so at the beginning, after he goes through the various kind of formalities about talking about Atisha's life story, talking about the greatness of the Lamrim teachings, the first sort of topic is how to rely on, how to find, and then how to rely on a spiritual friend, or a guru. And then there is this section, okay, the stages of how students train their minds after they have relied on the teacher, right? And then there is this exhortation to take full advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, okay? Or in shorthand, it's the teaching on the precious human rebirth, okay? And we'll get into that in a second. But then after he sort of convinces us the need to take advantage of this precious human rebirth, then there is the actual way one takes advantage and makes use of the rebirth. And that is the three sort of levels of practitioner. You understand? So Tsongkhapa first urges us to take advantage of this precious human rebirth. How do we do that? By practicing the topics that are in the rest of the Lam Rim. Okay? And so, as I mentioned briefly last week, so we'll review again, then those three types of person, or the three sort of levels of spiritual practitioner or Dharma practitioner, they have different motivations for their practice, each of which is more encompassing, right? So I think I mentioned last week, but in general, when we think of Buddhism, all of the Buddha Dharma was intended to alleviate suffering, okay? But the various practices that are laid out, then we can differentiate, thinking, well, what kind of suffering are they alleviating? And then whose suffering are they alleviating, okay? So that is a framework where we can think about these three types of practitioner. So this initial, or the small scope, or the person of the lower capacity, we can say, or initial capacity. What kind of suffering are they trying to alleviate? They're trying to avoid being reborn in the lower realms in their next life. And whose suffering are they trying to alleviate? Well, their own. Okay? Then the middle capable being, or the middle scope, there's different translations to it, but they are primarily motivated to be free of what kind of suffering? Not just the lower realms of samsara, but all of the sufferings of samsara, okay? And we'll get into what that means in a few minutes. And again, who's suffering? Their own. All right. Then we have the so-called great capable being. And what kind of suffering are they trying to alleviate? But the suffering of all of samsara, just like the middle scope person. But whose suffering of samsara? Then here themselves, but of all sentient beings. Okay? So they set as their goal, seeing that as they are now, they are unable to, even free themselves of samsara in their current situation. But they see if they achieve the state of enlightenment, then they'll be in the best sort of capacity, having all the skills, having all the knowledge to lead sentient beings to be free from samsara. And so they set that as their goal, okay? And if you're paying attention, at the beginning of this session, after our meditation, we set that as our motivation for this practice here today, okay? So although these, if it's 3 big volumes like this, and it's presented in, this kind of graduated path to enlightenment, even us at the beginning, we should try to at least have a sort of contrived or somewhat artificial motivation of bodhicitta, this altruistic wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, for all that we do, even if we don't even have the first realization, that of the precious human rebirth. Okay? All right. So, we talked about this last week, but Jetsunma was sort of going through the very famous sort of picture that's called the Wheel of Life, or in Tibetan, Sipe Korlo. So actually, Sipa is literally, it means existence. But here, it's also to mean samsaric existence, right? Or samsara. So although they call it the wheel of life, probably more sort of exact would to say it's the actual wheel of samsara. It's a graphic depiction of samsara, right? And so when we say samsara is the cycle of rebirth, okay? Well, to give a little bit more full definition of it, samsara is the cycle of uncontrolled rebirth, right? Uncontrolled means we don't decide when we die, we don't decide where we're reborn, but rather it's projected, it's determined by our karma and our afflictive emotions, our delusions, our klesha, our nyongmong. Okay, nyongmong is Tibetan, klesha is Sanskrit. So I'm just trying to, give you a few languages, because that term in particular has so many different translations into English. Disturbing emotions, delusions, afflictive emotions. And so sometimes it's better if you know just a few of the Tibetan terms, then when you go to different teachers, you can then know what they're talking about, okay? All right, so then we have this wheel, which depicts this process of uncontrolled rebirth due to our karma and afflictions, all right? And then just to review, the innermost circle, remember, had the three animals representing the three poisons of anger, attachment, and aversion, or ignorance, anger, and attachment. Yes? Okay. It's a little bit late for me. Okay. Okay, who am I kidding? It's not that in the morning my mind is any more clear. So I was just using that as an excuse, okay? I'll be honest. All right. And then as we go in the circle, then you have the three beings sort of in white, and then the three in black, right? And so that is then showing how one is taken rebirth into these different states. So due to our positive actions, that will then lead to rebirth in the so-called high states of existence, like a human or a deva or a small g god, right? And then the negative actions, those lead to rebirth in the so-called lower realms of existence, that of an animal, a preta or hungry ghost, or a hell being. Then when we go outside, the next sort of depiction is of these 6 realms within samsara, right? And so last week, Jetsunma had covered the sufferings of the hell beings and the hungry ghosts, or the pretas. And this week, spoiler alert, she's going to go through the suffering of the animals. And then she's going to talk about the sufferings of the gods, the demigods, and then lastly, the humans. Okay. All right. And toward the end of that, before she opens it up to questions, she sort of does what Tsongkhapa is doing in the Lamrim, exhorting us, sort of urging us to take advantage of this opportunity that's afforded to us by the fact that we have this type of body and mind in the human realm. Okay. So I thought what would just be sort of good in our time here today is to actually go through the full kind of presentation of precious human rebirth, and then kind of segue into the rest of the Lamrim, and then by next week we can start the actual 12 links. Okay? All right. All right. So normally the precious human rebirth, or the topic of the precious human rebirth is presented is, you first have the identification of what we mean when we say precious human rebirth, right? So the identification of the, here we have the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. So the characteristics of the precious human rebirth. And then we have the presentation of, its importance, or its sort of value, its benefit. And then we have its rarity. Okay, so those 3 topics. You understand? So it's kind of like this. You see, Tsongkhapa, he says in another text that, if we knew how difficult it was to acquire, living the average life would be impossible. If we saw its great meaning, means our life, if we saw its great meaning, we would feel regret if we let it go. Okay? So, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a little example from contemporary American culture. Sorry. But there's this TV show, okay, in the US. It's called American Roadshow. Have you heard of this? Okay. So in any case, maybe you can start one in Switzerland, okay? Swiss Roadshow. But, modern age, people accumulate a lot of stuff. People accumulate a lot of junk, right? So then, in the US, people have these big garages, which become like storage areas. And, people have a lot of clutter. And then sometimes they'll discover something that's like, oh, I wonder if any of this stuff, my grandmother left me all this stuff. I wonder if anything's actually of value. So they'll hire an antique sort of expert to come to the garage, and they might discover that whatever, this painting is actually of it's a Turner. I think he was an English artist, right? Yeah, Turner. And therefore it's worth, $200,000, something like this, right? You understand? So in the show then, these kind of experts come to the garage, and yes, most of the stuff is junk, but there might be, one thing, like an old, whatever it is, that is then identified as being so precious. And then sometimes, the family, once they understand, they have this treasure, sometimes they start crying, oh my gosh, they can pay off their credit card bills or whatever they want to do, right? So you see, they've had that article with them in their garage collecting dust. They didn't realize how precious it was. But then after they realize, then, it's known as like this huge kind of source of joy, right, for the whole family. So it's a kind of the same thing with us. See, we don't really appreciate or recognize how precious and rare this body is, this body and mind association. And therefore, if we're honest, we actually just allow it to, as it were, collect dust in our garage, and we don't really do anything that meaningful with it. I mean, of course, we, I don't know, go on nice vacations, we eat nice food, we, have nice sensory experiences. But as it will be later pointed out, Shantideva is saying that actually the kinds of pursuits we normally spend all our time with is actually no different from the animals. The animals can go and fill their bellies. They can, dogs can have a nice nap in the sun. Cats seem to sleep all day. And all the animals, yeah, they can get territorial with other animals, fight each other. They can, procreate and try to produce as many offspring as possible. Okay, that's not really special. So one of the great Tibetan masters, a Kadampa master, said, now is the time where we have to distinguish ourselves from domestic animals. You understand? Right? And so how we do that is, using our intellect, and in particular, using our ability to, reason and also to differentiate between what is right and wrong. And not only then knowing what is right and wrong, but then, exerting ourselves in the activity, virtue, and trying to refrain from non-virtue as much as possible, right? So I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but that's the point of this topic being right at the beginning of Lam Rim. So we sort of appreciate this very amazing opportunity that we have, because we've been reborn as a human, and not just as a human, but a human in this sort of day and age where the methods that teach us, how to differentiate between virtue and non-virtue, the teachings that tell us what samsara is and how to get free of it, it's really, really amazing. And so that's why it's here at the beginning. So let's just go through it very briefly. But first we have this identification of means to be the precious human rebirth. And so you'll know in the Lam Rim there's many lists, right? So here we have these 18 characteristics that qualify a precious human rebirth. And there's 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, okay? So many of you, right? It's review, right? Yes? Okay, so I can just be quick about it. Then the 8 freedoms, we have, it's a freedom because it's a freedom from a type of rebirth where we couldn't have the opportunity to practice like we're able to now, okay? So then of the 8 freedoms, there's 4 non-human rebirths, and then there's 4, even when you're a human, would be states where you couldn't practice as well, okay? So the 4 non-human rebirths are rebirth as a hell being, rebirth as a hungry ghost, and rebirth as an animal, and then rebirth as a long life God, okay? And there, the long life God, well, there's a few explanations, but you can either think of it as these beings who in the God realm, it's sort of like, the small g gods of the Greek pantheon, right? They are characterized, yes, You know, some of them are laying down and eating grapes and are getting fanned, right? But they also sort of, you know, get jealous with each other and then engage in war with one another, right? But in general, uh, they have a lot of sensory pleasure, sensory enjoyments, right? And so when one is very caught up and having all these enjoyments, one doesn't see any sort of suffering in their life, and then one doesn't then think to uh, do spiritual practice, right? So remember last week we were talking how um, Jetsunma was giving a presentation of these realms of cyclic existence in a more metaphoric way, right? Um, and so here, even these long life gods, they can be sort of akin to like the present day celebrities, particularly movie stars, right? Where, you know, they're very caught up in you know, their lavish lifestyles. They are just you know, trying to maintain their fame, accumulate more popularity, accumulate more wealth and mansions like this. And so, you know, uh, they don't really see anything wrong with their lives. And then very few of them, uh, of course, there's a few notable exceptions, but very few of them will devote serious time to, you know, practicing Dharma. Okay, so that's one way of interpreting these long life gods. The other way is, well, there's actually certain concentrations that one can achieve where one will then, after one is reborn from this life, be reborn in a state that is like a very, very deep sleep, no discriminations, right? And so it is said that when you're born, you have the thought, I am born. And then you're in this, like, it's like almost like you swoon and you're in this deep sleep for many, many eons. When you're about to die, you then have the thought, I'm about to die. But in that intermediate phase, you're like a blank, right? So you're not, you know, thinking about virtue, you're not thinking about anything. So that is another way of describing the long life God. Okay. All right. Then we have the four non-human, the four human types of rebirth that even if you're born as a human, it is difficult to practice, right? Oh, so sorry. I think we covered the lower realms last time in some level of detail, and you saw Jetsuma's presentation, so I'm not going into that more. But the point here, right, is to think about if one was born in those various states, how difficult it would be to practice Dharma. So we were saying, you know, whether you take the hell beings as, you know, an actual sort of physical location, or if you take it more as an analogy, the fact of the matter is, you know, you have the experience of, you know, being chopped up into little pieces, being boiled in molten copper, of being, you know, stabbed with various spears, you know, so that's your mental experience. And so if you were having that experience all the time, then it'd be very, very difficult to practice Dharma. It'd be very, very difficult to, you know, even having any kind of thought besides, oh my gosh, make it stop, you know, right? Okay. So that's the point. All right. So then even as a human, you have the human beings who are, you know, born in a time when the Buddhas have not come in the world, right? Now, this is not to be sort of sectarian, but we'll get to this a bit later. You know, the fully qualified precious human rebirth, right? It is precious because we can, with it, attain liberation and enlightenment, right? And as we'll see later, in order to achieve liberation, we need to be free of the causes of samsara. The fundamental one being the grasping to the self, or grasping to true existence. Okay. Now, since that is the root of samsara, how do we uproot that? Well, the mind grasping to true existence is a wrong view, right? And so to combat that, one needs to discover the right view. The right view is that all phenomena lack this true existence, or lack inherent existence. And that is actually what the view of emptiness is, okay? Now, since the Buddha, it was the unique among teachers in teaching emptiness, right? Those who want to achieve liberation from samsara, well, they need to discover the truth of emptiness. They need to realize emptiness. And since things appear to us in this mistaken way, they appear to us as being truly existent, inherently existent, we need to first rely on a teacher that will then say to us, hey, you know what? This is a false appearance. Things don't exist in the way they appear. And then we need to then analyze how phenomena actually exist. And since this is very subtle, very difficult, we need to rely on, teachers and their teachings that explain this in a very clear, unmistaken way. And therefore, we have the Buddha, and later Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, Aryadeva, and so forth, and later, Tsongkhapa and other teachers. Okay, so when we say that, okay, those beings who weren't born in the time when the Buddha's teachings exist in the world, yeah, technically they don't have a precious human rebirth, but it's not like it's not that us meeting the Buddha's teachings makes our life precious, because we then make offerings to Buddha, and then the Buddha likes us, and he thinks, okay, yes, Talia has given me, those flower offerings, and later all those water bowls for me. Okay, I'm going to give her liberation. No, it's not like that. It's that the teachings that explain very precisely what the root of samsara is, and then its opposite, right? The wisdom realizing emptiness. We need to cultivate that mind in our continuum. And since the Buddha is the one who taught that, then that's the reason why engaging in the Buddha's teachings is the prerequisite here, and what makes the precious human rebirth so precious. Do you understand? Okay. All right. So, the Buddha appearing in the world, okay, that's one prerequisite. But then, even if the Buddha appears in the world, we have the next one, freedom from being born in a so-called border region. So you can imagine, during the Buddha's time, yes, the Buddha's teaching, it spread a little bit, but it didn't get to, for example, South America, right? When the Buddha was alive on Earth, it didn't spread to South America. So being born in a border region means even when the Buddha's teachings exist in the world, they don't travel beyond the so-called borders, right? So that's the second. Then third is, freedom from being born with imperfect faculties. So not having, the complete faculties, being, mentally sound. So people with, severe sort of mental retardation. Yeah. And here we should say, now, this doesn't then mean that, they're not precious, or, in general, they're not somehow worthy of having a life. Remember, this teaching on the precious human rebirth is so we can discover how precious our life is, in the sense that we can use it to practice Dharma. And so we actually use it then to practice Dharma, right? This follows a very, a general kind of principle that we should use all the Dharma teachings like a mirror, a mirror for ourselves. It's not then to, criticize others and say, oh, your life is not precious. It's not like that. Okay? All right. All right. So, yeah. And then the last, holding wrong views. So here, although there are many wrong views, the ones that are most important in this context is to deny the existence of cause and effect, or the law of karma, to deny the so-called, past and future rebirths, to deny the existence of liberation and enlightenment, right? So here again, you can see, if one did not have, or if you believed that at the end of this life, then that's it, well, one's sort of motivation to, practice very hard for a long period of time would, be a bit curtailed. You would just, fall into, the ancient school of hedonism, right? That was what they thought. This life is it. So in this life, just eat, drink, and be merry. Because there's no kind of consequences for one's actions of virtue or non-virtue. Okay? Oh boy. Okay. So then let's just go through the 10 sort of endowments a little bit quickly. So here again, we have 5 that are pertaining to ourself, and 5 that are pertaining to the world at large. So the 5 pertaining to the self is, to be reborn as a human, to be reborn in a central country, to have faith in the teachings, and to have, reversible karma. Okay? What this means is not to have committed one of the so-called 5 heinous actions. Means killing your mother, killing an arhat, causing a schism of the sangha, or drawing blood from the Buddha with a malicious intent. So it is said that those karmas are, among the heaviest that we can do. And so if you have done one of those, then it's according to some of the systems, it's actually impossible to attain liberation in that lifetime. Actually, according to the Prasangika Madhyamika school, strictly speaking, that's not true. You could conceivably purify even those heavy negative karmas and attain liberation in that life, but you're not doing yourself any favors. So anyway, that's what it means to have reversible karma. So that's only 4. So being born as a human with complete faculties, that's the 5th one. Okay, born as a human, complete faculties, in a central region, having faith in the source, and having reversible karma. Okay, all right. And then the five factors having to do with the world at large is being born at a time when the Buddha has descended, has taught that there are people who are practicing and getting realizations, right? That the teachings remain, and that practitioners enjoy kind support, right? So, yeah. Yes? Okay. You guys know all this. All right. So next is contemplating its rarity. So here again, we have more outlines. We have the rarity in terms of the numbers, which is to just do a little bit of math, considering the relative rarity. I think we talked about this last week, where compared to human beings, there's actually so many more animals. Compared to the animals, there's so many more pretas, and then even more hell beings. And then even among human beings, the ones who are born with those specific, in a specific time and place, with perfect faculties and having faith, that's even more rare than the rare. And then when we consider the time element, yeah, it's really, really amazing to think that we have attained this kind of precious human rebirth. Lama Tsongkhapa, he says, understanding the precious human rebirth is found just once, right? So, yeah. I sometimes like to think, and I would almost wager that, although we talk about beginningless samsaric rebirth, that the rebirth that we have now is the best one we've ever had since beginningless time in terms of Dharma practice. What do you think? Huh? You think that? Do you act that way? Oh man, I even say that, and it's like, yeah, it really hasn't sunken in. But I think it's true. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is on the planet, right? So, just that is like already like 99.999%. But not only that, but we can receive teachings from him in a language we know and understand. It's really, really amazing. Okay. So that's numbers, meditation of the rarity by the numbers. And then, well, why is it so rare? Then we have the meditation on, the rarity due to the causes. And because getting this precious human rebirth depends on causes, primarily practicing pure morality. And since practicing pure morality is so very difficult, then attaining the cause of this precious human rebirth is also difficult. All right. I'm just kind of breezing through this. And then the last one is the analogy. So many of you know, right? The turtle in the sea. Yes? Okay. Who comes up every 100 years. There's a yolk floating on the sea, and the chances that the turtle will come up in the yolk, right? Okay. So compared to that, then the chance of us getting a precious human rebirth is even so much more rare. Okay, so like that. All right, and then we have the next general outline, which is um, the great benefit of the rebirth. So we have the benefit in terms of sort of short-term aims. So in the short term, we can get a good rebirth in our next life. We can even get reborn in a so-called Pure Land of the Buddha in our next life. And then on a more sort of ultimate aim, we can get liberation and enlightenment in this very body that we have. And then there's the further contemplation that, every second is so precious. So even, one, I think we mentioned last time, even, to a picture of the Buddha doing a prostration mudra, right? Even meditating for loving kindness, meditating on loving kindness for 1 second, meditating on bodhicitta, of course, meditating on emptiness. Even if you can't meditate on emptiness, reciting the Heart Sutra once, these little things we can do, even in a few seconds, a few minutes, it's unbelievable how much, merit we can accumulate and how much negative karma we can purify. I think we talked about, was it with you guys? Oh no, it was with another group. But I was talking recently about the great benefit of making offerings to the souls. And Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche quotes this sutra saying that, every time we even make an offering of just one tiny flower to the 3 jewels or a stupa or even a statue, we collect the merit, right? Equivalent for us to enjoy, right, things within samsara, as much as we've enjoyed from beginning of time till the present. Do you understand? As much as we've enjoyed in terms of wealth, food, sensory enjoyments, as much as we've already experienced since the beginning of this lifetime till now, okay? By making one offering of one flower to one, even small statue of Buddha, we collect the merit equivalent to all that we've ever enjoyed. Yes? That's what it says. Anyway, the point is, even in 1 second, even in a small amount of time, we can accumulate a lot of virtue. Okay? I'm seeing Natalia there. She wants to benefit sentient beings, as we all do. And so it's a little bit, especially as students of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, where he's very much emphasizing holy objects, making offerings to holy objects. It's very good. So I'm not going to, criticize or find fault with that approach. But, there are other texts, and, Shantideva talks about how, since our enlightenment is coming from both revering the Buddhas, coming from both the Buddhas and sentient beings, why is it that we only revere the Buddhas and not sentient beings? Okay. So, yeah. Like, all right. So, let's see. That's the precious human rebirth. And, I wanted to leave time for both questions and then do some guided meditation. So what do you think? Time for questions? All right, if there's no questions, I'm just going to keep talking.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for
Hi.
teachings.
Yeah, what's your question?
Okay, when you was talking about uh, the um, the gods that will be reborn in form of formless realms, and you said like that
Yeah.
they will be in state like a coma, right?
Um, okay, keep talking.
Okay,
So,
so I
so
think it feels yes.
yeah, so technically, okay. Okay, no, why don't you finish your question? Sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
my question is, it feels like kind of contradiction because if to description when we read about when somebody attained the single point concentration, he had a lot of pliancy of body and mind. So it's kind of blissful state. And then like kind of, like as you said, it's kind of coma. So it's, I felt like contradiction. They're supposed to feel like kind of bliss, maybe some psychic bliss, but still like kind of, pleasure bliss, I guess.
Right. Okay. Um, so did you all hear and understand him? Okay. We're talking, there's two interpretations of what the long life God is, and then one interpretation is this one who doesn't have any discrimination except for I am born and then I am dying, right? But for a long period of time, just in a kind of neutral coma-like state. So then to attain these form and formless realm concentrations, okay, so you guys know we have the three realms. There's the desire realm, right, which we're in. All the three lower realms are also in desire realm. Humans are in desire realm, and then there are some uh, uh, gods and demigods. They're desire realm gods, right? But then you have form and formless realm gods. Okay. Now, to be reborn as a form and formless realm god, you first need to achieve shine, or shamatha, the calm, abiding mind. When one achieves shine, actually before one does that, one is attaining the physical and mental pliancy. Some of you heard that? Okay, do you know that English word pliancy? Pliancy means like it's quite workable. Uh, like if you had clay that you can then, mold into anything. Okay, very pliant. Okay, so on the road to achieving shine, you achieve physical and mental pliancy, which is accompanied by great bliss. So if that is the kind of prerequisite on the road to attaining, this form and formless concentration, then why are you saying that characterized coma-like state? That's the question. All right. So here, the answer is actually within the form realm. Okay, you have four states, and by the time you get to the third state, all right, without getting too detailed, okay, by the time you get to the third state, you no longer even feelings of bliss. Okay, the way you traverse all these states is you look at the one you're at, and you might look at the one below it, and then you look at the one on top of it, the higher one, and you see the relative advantages of the lower and the higher, and then you can basically overcome attachment or clinging to the lower one. Okay, so even these blissful states, okay, these yogis have very, 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 very subtle minds, and when we have bliss, although we like it, actually, to a very subtle mind, it's disturbing. There's a lot of energy there, right? Right? And so they then come to see the faults of even, sensory pleasure. And so by the time they reach that state, they only have neutral feelings. You understand? So therefore, this long life God does only have neutral feelings. And then to be very technical, actually, it's not a formless realm God. It's a God in the form realm, third level. But even that, there's a particular kind of concentration they enter into. They're actually called the duce mebaba. Duce is discrimination, and so it's one without any discrimination. There are other types of form realm gods who are not technically these long life gods. Okay, so Alexander is, a very diligent student, and so I'm giving him that level of detail. Those of you who are like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Don't worry about that too much. Okay, Natalia.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, clear?
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
All right.
The story that you share about practicing Dharma being about giving up attachment to this life.
Yes.
How do we balance that teaching with to not being attached to this incredible opportunity that we have, that, is the precious human rebirth?
Yeah. So it's all about motivation, right? So, like, for example, this teaching on precious human rebirth is so we appreciate, right? So we use it wisely so that we practice Dharma, right? Now, we could, of course, okay, sorry. When we say giving up attachment for this life, right, we're primarily talking about the eight worldly concerns, right? Gain and loss, good reputation, bad reputation, pleasant experiences, unpleasant experiences, and nice sounds or, not nice sounds, criticism, praise, things like this. Okay. So now, even the pursuit of those eight worldly concerns, that depends on one's motivation, if that becomes virtue or non-virtue, right? I think I had mentioned before, but bodhisattvas, they actually want to have a good reputation, right? And bodhisattva, if they came into a lot of material wealth, they would not buy, golden bathtubs and I don't know, whatever. It's not for themselves, but they could do a lot of, good in the world with it, right? So, in the same way, when we think about our lives, we think of it as something being precious, but precious from the standpoint we can use it to practice Dharma, right? Am I talking somewhat related to the question?
Yeah, you are. And I think the key point is that giving up attachment to this life is the eight worldly concerns. If it's not with a bodhicitta, bodhisattva motivation. Yes, spot on.
Yeah.
That's what I need to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So before we go to the analytic meditation, I wanted to just give a more sort of general introduction about the various kinds of meditation, and in particular analytic meditation, right? So at the beginning of this class, we did the mindfulness of the breath, right? Okay, all right. So in general, if you remember me saying, the word for meditation in Tibetan is gom. Gom means to familiarize or habituate, right? Okay. And then we have these two kinds of meditation. We have placement meditation, which the mindfulness of the breath was, right? It's called it's called placement meditation because you take mind and you place it on one object, and then you try to keep it there without wavering and getting distracted to other objects. And with a mindfulness of the breath meditation, what we were doing, remember, we were working with the natural breath, right? So whatever came natural, whatever sensations there were in the body, we just observe, right? Okay. So that's one kind. Now, analytic meditation is the other kind of meditation, and this is very much emphasized in the Tibetan tradition, because when we talk about meditation as being familiarization, we want to familiarize our minds with virtuous thoughts. And for us, virtuous thoughts arising is somehow quite rare and elusive. You know, as Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, that he likens it to on a dark and stormy night, sometimes lightning will come and briefly illuminate the whole world, right? So similarly, through the power of the Buddha, rarely will a wholesome thought, arise in our minds, right? Yeah? Okay. So what we're trying to do with our analytic meditation is make lightning strike, okay? We're trying to use reasoning, analysis, scriptural quotation, whatever tools we have at our disposal to conjure up a virtuous thought. Do you understand? And then when this virtuous thought is there in the mind, we then fix our mind on that and we switch back to the placement meditation, right? So, like we did at the beginning of the session when we were doing the motivation, I walked you through some, ways of thinking. Okay, the purpose of my life is to benefit all sentient beings. In order to benefit all sentient beings in the best way, I need to achieve enlightenment. Therefore, this. Okay, so that essentially was a kind of guided analytic meditation, right? Where we sort of go through a process, a sequence of different thoughts, and then at the end, we had this conclusion. Therefore, I'm going to listen to this Dharma teaching, right? Okay, so you all know how to analytically meditate then, right? Doing that. You with me? Okay, all right. So why then we have all these, big Lamrim texts, and why we have the outlines in particular, is then it's like a meditation guide where we then go through the sequence of different contemplations and we try to arrive at a certain conclusion. Okay? It's simple. There's nothing, you know, that mystical going on yet, right? Okay. So, without further ado, let's do a analytic meditation based on the precious human rebirth. Okay? And so, this is a bit important that, when we study the text, they talk about the three types of wisdom arising from hearing. So either hearing, teaching, or reading books, right? And then we have the wisdom arising from contemplation, and then the wisdom arising from meditation. So contemplation is we, then sort of apply what we're reading, what we're hearing with our own lives. And then we meditate, means after contemplating for a while, then allowing our mind to really sink in to those realizations. Okay? And then a more sort of fundamental change can happen on deeper levels of our mind. Okay? That's the point. Okay, so let's go into comfortable meditation posture. And so normally, if we had more time, you could do a few minutes of the breathing meditation just to calm the mind. But we'll do just a bit abbreviated today. All right, so now when we meditate on the precious human rebirth, we first have to, bring to mind what that means. So here, you can think of the 8 freedoms, and then in particular, you could go through one by one, thinking, if I were now, instead of having been reborn as a human, if I was born as a hell being, what it would be like, how difficult it would be to practice Dharma, so here you can recall the very vivid descriptions of, being crushed by boulders, being chopped up by weapons, being boiled in molten copper. I think, what it would be like to actually experience that. When we actually, burn ourselves on making our morning tea, it's like we almost jump out of our skin. So imagine, no escape from that. And not just in our hand, our whole body. Feeling that much pain from heat. So think how difficult it would be to even have any kind of thought of virtue. So really try to think how it would be to be boiled in molten copper. And then think how difficult it would be to have any kind of virtuous thought, any thought, even besides, may this excruciating pain stop right this second. So now here, when you do the analysis and you come to that conclusion, right? Oh, it would be so unbearable. It would be so difficult to practice there. Then you can stop the analysis, stop the discursive thought, and then just rest your mind in that conclusion. And here, if there is some feeling, some sensations in the body associated when you read conclusion, then you can, to help you stop the conceptuality, rest your mind in those sensations in your body. Okay, so now we'll move on. So now consider that actually you are not born as a hell being, but instead you have this precious human rebirth. And therefore, you can practice, you can cultivate the types of thoughts that is not possible for the hell beings. And therefore, really try to cultivate this sense of your life being so precious because you're free of type of suffering. And having freedom from that type of suffering then allows you to cultivate virtuous thoughts. Again, at the end of your analysis, when you arrive at the conclusion, then just rest in that certainty. Okay, so gently come out of the meditation.
Venerable Namjong, what's your question again?
Oh, is the sound cutting out? My question was just, I know many of you are new to analytic type of meditation. So I wanted to know if I cut out a few times from the Zoom, but you know, do you at least have an idea about how it is done, analytic meditation? Yes? Okay. Okay. So we can dedicate, or I'll dedicate. We can all dedicate. So yeah, you know the purpose of dedication, right? So to make sure that the virtue that we've accumulated will ripen in the best possible way. So just at the beginning of the session, we motivated with bodhicitta, and we'll dedicate with bodhicitta as well. So please think that due to the virtue that we've accumulated in our time here together, well, first, that this mind of bodhicitta may arise in our minds and in the minds of all sentient beings without even a second's delay, and may that which has already arisen may it increase, and then may all the sentient beings quickly achieve the state of enlightenment, and only have all the required conditions to achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible manifest. So yeah, we also dedicate all our merits and the merits of the 3 times by the numberless sentient beings and the numberless for the long ones of the spiritual friends, particularly the Dalai Lama, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and that all their wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then, yeah, let's dedicate for all of the problems that are facing the world today. So we dedicate all of our merits as well as the merits of all others, so that all the disease, coronavirus, and all the other diseases, all of the natural disasters, all of the war, all of the economic problems, all of the political problems, and you know, disharmony, quarreling and fighting within the people of the world, may these certainly be pacified. Okay, so I think that's it for this week, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway,
Okay.
we'll see you next week, and yeah, be good to each other. Okay,
Thank
and see you soon.
See you soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye.